Hello and welcome to week 3. We are right in the middle of our semester, or getting towards the middle. Um, I wanted to say you guys are doing great again on the discussion boards, the Democracy and the Individual Forum, and the How Are We Doing Forum. Both have some really interesting discussions going on. I did want to point out that a few people need to be a little bit more thoughtful when they post. There's some pretty short posts that are probably being typed on a phone at a stoplight. I would like you to really think about the fact that this is an academic class and that you need to be posting in an academic fashion um, so that you can be using your ideas in your language and learning as you're posting. I did want to cover some class business issues, so let me do those right at the start, and then I've got a few comments on the idea of identity and democracy and problematizing democracy, and some thoughts on the paper. So we got quite a few things to talk about as far as class business, and most of this appears already in the notes that you will find on in week 3. But I want to make sure I talk about them orally as well as in the handouts. So here's the first note. The due dates are changing. We're going to move from a Monday to Sunday week instead of a Friday to Thursday week. I figure this will include the weekend at the end of the week so that for those that need the weekend to be able to complete the work, they will be able to use that. It will also help me out a little bit because I'm on so many committees, so much happening on campus for me that this gives me time to actually get some more stuff posted during the weekend. So that week that due date of Sunday at 11:59 p.m. for a week's work will start for week 3, and that means you actually have a couple of extra days tossed in on week 3 for you. So let's see. The other thing to point out is that that due date for that week's work goes for forums or quizzes or exams, whatever we have happening during that week that you will need to get done before the due date. For other items like paper assignments or workshops, those kind of have their own independent due dates. Your workshop paper of writing number 1 is due this week on September 15th by 11:55 p.m. You have until September 15th at 11:55 p.m. to post that paper. After that you will not be able to post the paper into workshop, and you will then start gaining late points on the paper or losing points on the paper due to lateness. Um, you also have a requirement in that workshop to post comments on somebody else's paper, to read the paper carefully, think about it, write about it, and there's instructions for doing that online. Those comments are due by September 18th. So what that essentially means is that you have a week to get your paper posted and to get comments up on other people's papers. But we need to get those done because the due date for the revised draft of that paper will be coming up the next week. So we got to get those done quickly. The sooner you can get your paper up online, the more quickly other people will comment on it, the more quickly you'll get some response. If you wait until the September 15th, you will probably be one of the last ones in line to get that paper up, and people are less likely to read your paper and comment on it. So that's the writing number 1 paper. You also have a writing exam due this week. You will be taking that exam online. Just like you take the quizzes, you click on it, a timer starts, you have to finish that quiz within 10 minutes. The writing exam, you will have an hour to write an essay on the spot at your computer. The writing exam will start September 15th and will end September 18th. I'm giving you that amount of time to log in, take the exam, and complete the exam because you may have you may have a schedule that doesn't allow you to do it on a certain day. So you've got 4 days to figure out an hour that you can sit down and actually do that exam. I don't want to give you much longer than that because I really want to avoid collusion on that exam, which collusion means working together. And because it is an exam that's on your writing, I want to make sure that people aren't sharing ideas or sharing the essay questions. You'll see a warning about that on the exam information sheet. Um, so you should read that exam information sheet carefully so that you understand what the requirements are, what you'll be expected to do, and what some of the warnings are that I've got on that sheet. Let's see. I should also point out that after I post this lecture, all my contribution for the week, except for my comments in the forums, will be up. You have a number of handouts that I've posted on this week's work. One on source use and citation, one on formatting, one on plagiarism, and one on the writing exam. You should read those handouts carefully so that you know what the expectations are, and there's some help in there for you for thinking about how you do those different elements. I went ahead and included the information on source use and plagiarism because we are coming up on our first paper, and you are expected to use either Dewey or Durkheim in that paper, so you should know how to properly cite those sources and use them in your paper. So check out those handouts. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the readings for this week, and then kind of move from that into talking about the paper. Just a couple more notes on writing number one. The readings for this week are Mary Wollstonecraft and Cornel West. Mary Wollstonecraft is a pretty famous feminist, one of the first feminists that we can point to and say that this person published an influential document that really affected the ways that people view the role of women in society. Her document, her book was The Vindication on the Rights of Women, and she published it way back in, what was it, 18, I had the date and I forgot it. I think it was like 1816. I mean, it's a really old document. It's almost 200 years old. Maybe, no, I got it confused with this year. It's maybe 1792. Anyway, it's over 200 years old. She published it a long time ago, talking about what is the role of women in society, how should women be treated, and in particular, she was responding to the idea that women were not a part of society. Women did not have rights in society, and she was arguing that women are every bit as rational as men. Women have every bit the logical powers as men, and at that time, women were not seen as having the ability to participate in society. Wollstonecraft's argument is essentially a democratic argument for the inclusion of women. Cornel West's argument is an argument to think about a more just democracy, a democracy that invites everybody in and makes everybody have the potential for full citizenship, and it has everybody has the potential for full participation in society. And in particular, Cornel West is interested in issues of race and class and how we should work together to ensure that all persons of all races, all persons of all classes have the ability to participate in society. I wanted to point out a couple of things about the readings. Cornel West is easier to read than the other readings we've had. He's just got a natural style that makes people want to read him. Cornel West often writes and speaks. I don't know if you've ever seen Cornel West speaking, but he often speaks in the kind of ministerial voice. He's like a preacher right there on stage, and so he's really easy to listen to, really easy to understand. Although the ideas that he's working with are really philosophically based. Wollstonecraft, since she's writing over 200 years ago, is a little bit harder to understand. You got to spend a little bit more time to break down the changes in the language patterns. But once you start to get a sense of reading her, she becomes much more clear. I did want to point out that both our writers are writing as people who are posing public arguments. And because of that, we have things we could learn from them. We could read their writing and think about how do they use their ideas, how do they support their ideas, what do they do with those ideas. Both writers use secondary sources. Both writers use examples from their daily lives. Both writers use examples from common social stories. And looking at how they establish their points and how they prove their points with evidence can be pretty instructive for us. For instance, for Wollstonecraft, we can just point to a place where she has a thesis statement in her writing. And And then she sets out to prove that thesis statement. Her thesis statement comes at the end of the second paragraph in the section that we got. And here it is. Yet to their senses are women made slaves, because it is by their sensibility that they obtain present power. That's on page 78 of your text. Let's look at that as a thesis. To their senses, women are made slaves. So she's kind of inverting the one of her clauses there. But what she's saying is, in our society, women are made slaves to their senses. Women aren't allowed to do anything outside of their senses. That is, their emotions and their feelings. In her society, she's claiming that women aren't seen as creatures of the mind. But then the second part of the sentence comes in. But it is by their sensibility that they obtain present power. So she's claiming that the only way women can free themselves from this social stricture put upon them, that they are just emotional animals, they have no power. The only way that they can gain power is through the use of their mind, through their logic and their reason, and their ability to use that logic and reason to gain power in society. And then she proves that to us throughout her essay. She shows us how women are as logical and as reasonable as men. And she brings up example after example for that. That use of a thesis there at the very start of her essay sets her up for developing a strong argument. I think that's an important thing that we can pay attention to. For Cornel West, I wanted to actually read a little bit of him out loud. This may seem kind of weird for me to read to you a book that's already sitting in front of you. I actually do this in my classes occasionally, where I read part of what we've read in class out loud, just so that you as a student can get a sense of the rhythm of the language and to hear what an effective writer sounds like when they put it out loud. Now, I will say this. If you've ever seen Cornel West speak, if you've ever watched him or listened to him, he's a powerful speaker, a powerful writer. He's most recently been most active in the Bernie Sanders campaign. He's still a professor. He's a very public individual. You should go check out some YouTube videos of him, because I can't do him justice. He does himself justice. But that said, I wanted to read a couple of his paragraphs just so that you can get a sense of how he sounds as a writer. So I'm going to read the paragraph at the end of page 112, and then the paragraph in the middle of page 114. I'm going to skip a couple paragraphs in there just to get a sense. Actually, maybe I'll just start at the start of it. Too many, our democratic system seems so broken that they have simply lost faith that their participation could really matter. The politics of self-interest and catering to narrow special interests is so dominant that many ask themselves, why vote? This disaffection stems from both from the all too true reality of the corruptions of our system and from a deeper psychic disillusionment and disappointment. The political discourse is so formulaic, so tailored into poll-driven, focus group-approved slogans that don't really say anything substantive or strike at the core of our lived experience. The lack of authenticity of discourse and the underlying lack of gravitas, of penetrating insight and wisdom on the part of politicians is numbing. But we must keep in mind that the disgust so many feel comes from a deep desire to hear more authentic expressions of insights about our lives and more genuine commitments to improving them. Many of us long for expressions of real concern, both about the pain of our individual lives and about the common good, hence the power of Bill Clinton's claim that he felt our pain, as opposed to the blatant catering to those base interests and to narrow elite constituencies. We long for a politics that is not about winning a political game, but about producing better lives. He goes on later to say, the dissonance of being both a person who ardently believes in democracy and democratic ideals, how can we not fall in love with them if and when we are exposed to them, and a wide-eyed realist about the dispiriting truths of everyday life in America can be alternately enraging, numbing, and crushing. But that dissonance, can be has also provoked our most impassioned and profound indictments of democratic failures. From Ralph Waldo Emerson's championing of the necessity of self cultivation and his praise for John Brown's radical abolitionism, to Herman Melville's darkly tragic portrayal of Ahab's crazed imperialistic nihilism, to Mark Twain's sly indictment of white supremacy, to James Baldwin's and Toni Morrison's profound explorations of the psychic scars of racism, and to Tupac Shakur's eloquent outrage, the violence-obsessed and greed-driven elements of American culture project themselves out to the world so powerfully and offensively that the world has developed a problematic love-hate relationship with America, the ugly extremes of which we are now forced to confront. But legions of Americans have been equally affronted by the perversion of our democratic ideals. I guess you have to look no further than a tribe of Native Americans in North Dakota fighting for the right to have their land not be invaded by an oil pipeline, or Colin Kaepernick's refusal to stand up during the singing of the national anthem as a professional football player, to see disaffection, to see the frustrations with democracy. We have those frustrations. We see news stories of those frustrations every day. And those frustrations lead some people to stand up and speak out. Democracy is this great idea, this idea that we are all created equal, that we all have equal voice in society, and we so often see that it's not true, that we don't have that voice, that some people have more voice than others. And you can hear the rage that Cornel West was writing with. He was writing at the height of the Bush administration, when he was thinking about how our democracy had been taken from us, or how some people's democracy had been taken from them. The very notion that democracy could be taken from anybody is a corruption of democracy. Democracy is equal for all. And if one person within a democracy finds their democratic powers lessened by another, then democracy has been corrupted. In that paragraph, that last paragraph that I read by Cornel West points out that this rage can induce in us a few things. It can induce in us disaffection. It can induce in us the desire, the feeling like we're just never going to get anywhere in society, so we might as well drop out. But it can also induce writing. It can also induce voices that rise up and say something, that speak out. This may seem like a silly paper assignment. Well, write about a time when you spoke out. Write about what it means to have a public voice. It may seem like a silly paper assignment. It is not at all silly. It is essential. It's essential to the idea of democracy, that you think about what is the power of your voice. But more important than that, it's essential to the idea of democracy that you speak out about the power of that voice, that you create that voice in a public forum. I don't want you to write a paper just to get a grade. I don't want you to write a paper that you wrote, let's see, the paper's due on September 15th. So you started writing it on September 15th and got it done before 11:55 p.m. I don't want you to write a paper just because you got an assignment. I want you to write a paper to think about how you say something in the world. Focus on analyzing your experience and making it meaningful. And do that before you start writing. Focus on being explicit with claims and subpoints, and figure out what your claims and your subpoints are before you start writing. Focus on using your experience and Durkheim or Dewey, and then maybe Plato and Dahl and Cornel West and Wollstonecraft and John Dewey. Maybe use them as well. Focus on using them and your experience as evidence for the points that you've created. Focus on making your paper about public voice its own public voice, where you speak out and you say something in the world, where you make your experience of democracy meaningful for others. I look forward to seeing your papers. We'll see you on the forums. We'll see you in the workshop. Let's have a great week. Take care.